share with us Facebook's vision for how you will serve an additional billion people, and how Facebook has been changing over the course of the day. So, last time I spoke to Mike, he wowed the audience in Cambridge by talking about just the scaling challenges of serving more than 8 billion people. And this is a pretty digital audience, but why don't you do that for me briefly? Just talk about what it's like to go and have more than 1 billion people continuously checking these apps and desktop sites all the time, and why that's so hard to do in a reliable way that doesn't break.
Yeah, sure. So it's been quite an adventure, I'd say, over the last few years. When I joined, we were probably around a couple 100 million people about 5 years ago, and today we're near, I think, 1.3 billion people using Facebook today, so on a monthly basis. And we've just seen tremendous growth in the last couple of years of this shift from web into mobile, and we've seen just tremendous growth in terms of people coming on Facebook for the first time on mobile, and also just the time spent on Facebook. So not only is it that there's 1.3 billion people using Facebook, it's really just astounding, because if you add up just Instagram and Facebook, 20% of people's time on the mobile phone is spent on those two apps. 20% of time spent on a mobile device is on Instagram plus Facebook. So the scaling challenges are such that, one, we have to handle the total number of people, 1.3 billion people using the platform, but also they're always on it doing more and more stuff and sharing. So in terms of our scaling challenges, I would say, a few years back, it was one that we really were, I think to be honest with you, just trying to keep the site up and running, right? And we were doing whatever we could to make the site run through the night so we could get a couple hours of sleep, and then tomorrow we'd do it all over again, get a couple hours of sleep. But slowly but surely we figured that this was not a path for us. We weren't going to sustain this short-term mentality, and we really had to start investing very deeply in our infrastructure, building that out so that we could continue to kind of demonstrate technology leadership, keep the site up, and then open up new opportunities for our product teams to build stuff. And so we started investing heavily in the infrastructure, in code and physical infrastructure. Back in 2010 or so, we went down the path of building our own data centers, building our own servers. We launched our first custom-built data center in Prineville, Oregon. When we launched that data center, plus the servers that went into it, and we did a study, we found that we were 38% more energy efficient in that infrastructure, and we reduced the cost at that point by 24% over conventional kind of co-location and OEM servers. And that was just the start of a path where we basically have accelerated our investment in building out teams of people that can really control our own destiny, so that we can, as I explained it to our team, we really want to build a platform that internally that's really, really flexible for all the product teams to be able to iterate and try lots of different things out. But once they found the magic idea, we want to be able to just launch that and scale into 1 billion plus people and have the infrastructure, manage that. Now, to answer your question a little bit, I think in more detail, we have, I think, over the last couple of years really shifted from kind of integrating stuff that we could find and buy to really just developing the technology or technical expertise to do everything ourselves, right? And we really truly believe that going forward and connecting the next several billion people, that what we have to have as a company is to be one of the greatest technology companies in the world. All of these challenges that we have, the nature of our application, the fact that all of these people that are using Facebook are all around the world, they connect to us on all sorts of different devices, tablets, range of phones, desktop computers, laptops, whatever it is, and that has just an extreme set of challenges in terms of what it means for our software, running on the phone, the tablet, but also the network and the back end, which is the data center, the servers, and the software that's running there.
When Facebook started, Zuckerberg had a strong belief that people should be friends with people they actually meet. And that's not how the users tended to end up using the network. people began collecting followers. It began to be possible to have people follow your public updates. And at this point, people began to have too much in the newsfeed. So you made some changes to the algorithm that refined what people saw in the newsfeed. And I don't think I'm alone when I say I'm confused now by what I see. So could you explain to me what Facebook chooses to show me and why?
Yeah, so every day that people use Facebook, every day you're on Facebook, there is more and more content being shared in Facebook. On a typical day for a typical user, there might be 1,500 or a couple of thousand different stories that are available to be shown to you, right? And remember that every experience that you have on Facebook is customized to you. There's nothing that is in common with your neighbor, your friend, your spouse, your brother, your sister, whatever it might be. Everything is customized to you at that moment. On the extreme cases, we see users who have vast networks, a lot of friends, and those friends are very active, and they follow lots of other maybe pages or businesses, etc. They may have tens of thousands, 15,000, 20,000 stories that are available to be shown to you. So, when you take all of that information and then you have this fixed amount of time, maybe you check Facebook or use Facebook for 30 minutes in that given day, we really have to, narrow this down to figure out what is the best stuff to show you. And we're constantly using very sophisticated machine learning techniques and feedback techniques and revising the way that we rank and we show the stories to people. So this is just a constant area of innovation for us, and we really try to get feedback from the users in terms of what the engagement is, where the time is. If we make a thing that's confusing and people then go away or don't interact with the content, that's bad, right? So this is a very measured approach, even though it may feel random to users. It is actually very measured and not random.
Okay. Okay, talk to us about the move to mobility. So I don't think I've ever seen a very large company make a platform shift as quickly as Facebook moved from being a desktop site to being a company wholly focused on mobility. And now you're making another transformation to having multiple apps, Messenger, Paper, which if you guys haven't used it, you should. It's gorgeous. So talk about the transformation from desktop to mobility to a company that has begun to defracture in its mobile applications.
Yes. So a couple years ago, we obviously saw the shift, and I think it's been well documented in terms of the shift to mobile and what it meant for our business. We had to invest quite a bit in transforming the way we worked and the way we developed products at Facebook to move off of this paradigm that was the web, right? And to keep in mind here is most of our users were on web, most of the engagement, most of the time spent was on desktop, laptop, browser. We were able to push code to the site once or twice a day, so we were very, very fast in our ability to get new features or bug fixes or to tweak, the experience there. And the shift to mobile was actually pretty jarring for us, right? It's very, very different as a developer to develop mobile apps and to not be able to release them to a billion plus people every day or twice a day, right? There's an upgrade path, there's the range of devices, there's a range of network conditions, etc. So things that we did, I think that are pretty, it was just a lot of hard work, but I think these are worth talking about for a moment here, which is, one is that we invested a lot in making sure that the engineering teams they had full autonomy in terms of their ability to work on and build mobile products, right? This was something that we had to do some reorganization in the way that we structured the engineering team so that mobile was the first part of everything we did. And Mark has talked about this publicly, but Mark set the tone here where people would come into his office to do reviews on a product and show up, and if you showed up with desktop or browser mocks, he would end the meeting. He's like, within 30 seconds, if the first set of mocks you showed were desktop mocks, he would cancel the meeting and say, come back when you have mobile stuff ready. And then teams quickly got okay, we need to be thinking and building for mobile first. The other thing that we did, we had a program where we retrained hundreds of engineers and employees in the company to be experts in iOS and Android, and we really built up our expertise on both of these technologies. We invested a lot in tools, and we moved to a kind of a program where we were committed to shipping new versions of our main apps every 4 weeks. So we had a whole kind of re-engineering every 4 weeks. We have a process today. And also on Android, we use the alpha and the beta programs on Android. So there are 1 million to 2 million people who are actually testing our apps every day, every week, as we're getting ready for one of these major launches, right? And so those were things that we did. There's also kind of a program that we have that's a countdown program where we're always getting feedback from people using Facebook on what are the things that are slow, bugs, crashes, annoying in the app, and feeding that back into the next release, the next patch that we're doing. And so that's kind of a lot of the infrastructure and the organizational stuff that we did to pave the way to building. We relaunched Messenger last year. Paper, which you mentioned, was launched a couple months ago. It's our first app as part of the Facebook Creative Labs initiative, which I'll talk about in a second here. We've made a lot of performance and other quality improvements in the main app as well, and Instagram has also done some pretty awesome things in the last couple of months in terms of new features. Now, going forward, our strategy is such that, and it's really dictated by all of us as people using mobile phones, that we're all kind of trained and used to, we want to open up our phone and we want to find that specific app for a specific purpose, right? We need something. We need to call, a taxi. We need a restaurant recommendation. We need to buy movie tickets. We need to send a message to somebody. All of these different apps kind of pepper our devices for these specific use cases that we have. And so Facebook, our team launched this initiative called Facebook Creative Labs a couple of months ago. And the whole purpose of this is kind of an initiative so that we can test out and try out what it takes to develop new experiences that help us kind of capture and delight people using Facebook. And it became such that you can only cram so much into the main app, right? And it becomes either really big and hard from a code and a technical perspective, but it's also hard to get to that quick action if it's buried 3 layers deep in the main app. Whereas if you have a separate app like Messenger or Instagram or WhatsApp when that acquisition closes, and other apps that we're working on, you'll be able to kind of interact with and get to that specific use case quickly. All of this stuff that we did in terms of training our developers, all the tooling we did, getting into this cadence and this kind of commitment to ship very often on mobile, to build up expertise in iOS and Android, all of that carries over to Facebook Creative Labs. So it's actually very...
Talk about Creative Labs, what it's meant to be.
Yeah, so Creative Labs there is really kind of an initiative within the company to look beyond the main apps being the big blue app, Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp at some point, and the first app that we launched was Facebook Paper. And if you haven't played with that, highly suggest you should try that. And you'll see a sequence of other apps coming out, and they're going to be these apps where we want to test out and experiment with different use cases. We want to find different ways to delight the users that are on Facebook today, and to provide new sharing experiences, new communication experiences, new ways to connect with friends and family in the world. And we just want to have a kind of a path or an avenue where we can try lots of stuff out and try those out in very quick iterations.
So let me ask a question about Paper. When I asked his chief product manager and his chief designer, Mike Mathis, if it was an experiment, he took that very much amiss. But it's hard when you use Paper not to see it as a fiercely uncommercial experiment. It has no advertising. We joke that it's what Facebook might look like if everyone at Facebook had exquisite taste and didn't care about mobile advertising. But at some point, those features are going to have to be either folded into the main app, or Paper is going to have to be downgraded in some way to become a more commercial venture. So what's the future of these experiments at Creative Labs? What do you do with them? So
I think that what we do with them is really, again, they are not meant to be, we don't imagine that all of them are going to be useful for everybody on the planet, right? We really are, I think, catering to trying out and building these different use cases. And our commitment behind these apps that we launch is we're going to work on them for some longer period of time. We really want to iterate and find ways that we can get the retentive natures of the app, that people come back and they use them and they're growing either the content or the consumption or the connections that those apps build. So something like Paper, you can imagine that as we continue to finish it out, there's a lot of things that are, we still have in the roadmap that we want to build to kind of build a better product here, is that you can imagine someday that we would have some way to monetize it. You can imagine that some of the technology that we're doing in terms of the dynamic gestures and the content curation and the content consumption would make their way into other apps, and we've actually open sourced some of that technology so that other app developers can take advantage of some of the cool and very sophisticated rendering techniques that we built into Paper that give you that immersive and very real-time experience with the content. So we actually do have some of the stuff that is built in Paper being used in the main app, and so these teams work together, right? And we'll see some of this happen with Instagram and Messenger and vice versa. So that's, I think, the whole kind of cool thing about Facebook Creative Labs is that we're able to go and build these new experiences and try these things out, and if they're working, and they'll kind of virally kind of pop up in other apps inside the company, right? And it's all about making sure that we're doing the things that people want and that are useful.
We ask the audience, how many of you have used Paper? A few of you. Those of you who haven't tried out, it's fascinating because it has completely thrown away the remaining legacy of desktop interfaces. It's a genuinely touch-oriented interface for reading and sharing. The guy who worked on it also did iOS 7 and Nest, and I think it's the best designed app in the world at the moment. Talking about about the Open Compute Initiative, explain what it is, why it's so important to Facebook, and how you think it might influence the technology industry at large.
Yeah, it's a great question. So our Open Compute project is something that we, started about 3 years ago, and it comes back to the earlier point that I made, which is, as we started to grow and we started to run out of, options in terms of commercial products and sort of standard ways of building out our infrastructure to support this growing number of people using Facebook, we started to design our own data centers, design our own servers, etc. But one of the things that we did differently was we said, okay, we're doing all this stuff, but we really want the whole industry to move faster. We want the industry to kind of get out of its path that it's been on for decades in terms of the way data centers are being built and designed, or designed and built, how servers are being designed and built and brought to market. And we really want to try to spur a quicker cycle of innovation. We want energy efficiency to be a priority. We want cost efficiency to be a priority. We want scale computing to be a priority for the conventional industry of the data centers and the servers and the network that goes around it. So about 3 years ago, we started this initiative. We kind of borrowed a bunch of principles from open source software, which hopefully everybody's familiar with in terms of what it has done to our industry. And we said we will take a bunch of these kind of sharing and community and kind of working together principles from open source software, and we're going to apply it to hardware. So we started this initiative called the Open Compute Project, and you can go check it out today. Today the community is filled with about 150, 160 different partners. So it's grown from us and a couple of people to 160 different partners. We've got chapters all around the world. We've done several summits where we bring in thousands of people to talk about all the developments. There's dozens of IP that's been, pieces of IP that's been contributed to the foundation. So it's independent now. It's not a Facebook-run thing, and it's being run by a number of big, kind of important technology companies in our industry. And so, why it's important for us is really, I think, accelerating the pace of innovation here in the physical infrastructure. As we think about this just massive amount of data that's coming in from Internet of Things and social media and communication and messaging, news, whatever it is, video, the physical infrastructure has to be scaling at a clip that's going to keep pace with this, right? So we need data centers, we need servers, we need network, we need a compute to process and to handle all of this stuff. And there's just, I think, a real need to be innovating faster at the physical layer of our technology to keep pace with all of these new ideas and applications and shift to mobile. So OpenCompute really is focused on driving a faster cycle of innovation. We really, as I said, we really care about energy efficiency, and we think that as we take on kind of more and more apps, more and more people get connected to the internet, there's more and more data to store and process, there's more video content, etc., that we want to make sure that this infrastructure that the world is building is being built in a very efficient and sort of a cost-efficient way as well.
Mark Zuckerberg himself has been very much involved with the effort to bring internet access to the billion who don't have it now. It's very easy to be cynical about this and say that Facebook is trying to find its next billion customers, but that's a perfectly legitimate desire. And I detect in the company that this effort, which is called internet.org, is based upon a sincere belief that connectivity empowers people, provides opportunities, and does surprising things as well. So take us through how Facebook thinks it might be possible to bring another billion people online.
Absolutely. So I would maybe kind of back up and start off by saying that Mark founded Facebook a little over 10 years ago with the mission of connecting everyone in the world. So, in many ways, in almost every way, the mission of the company hasn't really changed. I think what has changed is a real, a tangible belief that we can actually get to that goal. After we, had and celebrated 1 billion people connecting and using Facebook, it was, I think, eye-opening for the entire company to say, okay, well, our real mission is to finish, we have to get to 7 billion people, and it's going to be really hard, and here's the challenges that, are in front of us. And as I said earlier, we have kind of, shifted in our terms of our company culture and our priorities to really, I think, focusing on building a company that's just a great technology company that can do lots of things that pan out over a longer arc of time, right? And internet.org exactly is this mission, or this next phase of the company in terms of challenges, is connecting, the next however many billion people that are out there. And there's a number of, several billion, call it 3 or 4 billion folks out there that do walk around they are in a 2G or a 3G area. They may not have devices, they may not have the economic status, they may not have some other obstacle, or just maybe they don't even think that the internet is valuable to them, right? So one of the things that we're doing as part of internet.org is really on the business side. So we're working with the carriers around the world, and we're helping them lower the cost of getting access to data. We're helping them kind of rethink their business models for how they price and offer data plans. If you know, all of you should know this, is that a lot of the way we consume and buy data today is just carryover from voice and telco, right? So we don't think that that's really the way of the future in terms of people understanding how they consume data. And then also, it's important for us to, I think, work together as this community, carriers, us, and others, to reduce data consumption. And that's another area that we've focused on. It's an interesting story. We had a set of folks from our product management and our engineering team go to Africa last year and test out what it was like to use Facebook on these different networks around the world. And what we found is that our apps were crashing all the time. They had a bunch of performance issues, and they maxed out their data plan in 40 minutes. 40 minutes, right?
And
so it was a short trip.
And in Africa, that data plan, as we heard yesterday, is actual currency. It's a thing that you trade. It's incredibly important to you. You use it to be connected for business purposes, for family purposes. So to max out your data plan in 40 minutes is a real burden.
It's a real burden, right? So the team came back all fired up and said, okay, this is a problem, and we have now a whole team of people that is focused on reducing data consumption. And on just our Android main app, we reduced our data consumption by 50% in the course of a couple of months just by focusing on this problem. And there's like ongoing work there to continue to drive data consumption down, to drive up performance of our application, because it is this, we have to be sensitive to the fact that it is this currency that people live off of today. So that is like one part of the work that we're doing in terms of the carrier, the business model, and really, in some ways helping people understand what the value of getting connected to the internet is. Now the other half of this is there's another, say, billion or so people out there that just don't even have physical access to the infrastructure that will connect them to the internet. And that's where we've launched another initiative in the company called Connectivity Labs. And we've announced some news there in terms of our acquisitions of a company in the UK called Ascenta, which is a high altitude, long endurance plane technology. And we've also been investing in satellites, we've been investing in free space optics and other terrestrial communication technology to find ways to bring down, I guess, to improve or increase the time to market, shorten the time to market to getting folks connected to the internet, but also helping to drive down the cost for this, 20% or so of the world's population that doesn't have access to the internet.
Now, sometimes Facebook and Google are direct competitors, but sometimes you partner. The founders of Google are equally committed to internet access for the world's poorest. Might Facebook and Google partner around satellites or planes or balloons or other forms of connectivity?
Yeah, so I think, in general, we'd love to partner with anybody. I think it sort of remains to be seen whether that will work out between these two companies specifically. But we have a long track record of partnering. I think if you look at the work that we've done at Internet.org, Internet.org was launched as an alliance to begin with. Qualcomm, Ericsson, MediaTek, us were the founding companies of this effort. Our efforts in open compute, which I talked about a couple of minutes ago, were founded with partnerships with Intel, with Rackspace, Goldman Sachs, and others in the industry, and has now expanded to include folks like Microsoft and 150 other partners in that. But we've also done a lot of work in open source software where there's a lot of collaboration across different companies, whether it be Twitter or LinkedIn and others that we've worked with in the past. So I think Internet.org is still early on in that there's a lot of opportunity, and we welcome the possibility and chance to be able to work with people.
And one more question about Internet.org, and then we're going to take a few questions from the audience after we've talked about deep learning. Internet access for the entire world is the kind of problem we live to write about at MIT Technology Review, because it's a wicked big civilizational problem. It has technical challenges, business model challenges, regulatory challenges, and capital investment challenges. Of all the difficulties which all have to be solved to make it work, what part of the problem do we understand least? Is it technical, business model, treaty? Is it even cultural? What's the thing we really don't know how to do now?
I think it's a great question. I would say that the technology, there's a lot of really interesting technology in the space, right? There is the fact that we actually have, technologies such as satellites. We have these planes that can stay afloat for months or years out there. Things like laser communications, terrestrial things like microwave, and all the innovations that's happening in terms of Wi-Fi and LTE and 5G and all these different things. They'll all be kind of packaged together differently, I think, when it comes to solving a particular community's infrastructure problems, right? And you're going to apply different technology based on the population that you're addressing here. I think, for me, the thing that is the hardest, and I agree with you on this front, is to really understand what the geopolitical, kind of regulatory, and the social dynamic is. There's many places in the world where nobody understands why they want to use the internet. And that's like, how do you overcome that? How do you demonstrate that? And that's where I think we are so passionate about connecting everyone because we have been doing that for 10 years with the applications that we've been building, is that this is, really truly valuable to people once they understand how to connect with businesses, with their friends, family, to stay in touch with what are important life events, etc. And the other part of this is I think maybe more of the political and the government and the regulatory side of it, right? The way spectrum is managed and auctioned today, the way these telcos in various countries are managed and controlled, the way that the business models are structured today, there's real impediments to this adoption of this technology. And I think a lot of that is social and sort of people related.
Great problem. I'm going to ask one more question about deep learning, and then I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask Jason questions too. Last year, Facebook created a deep learning project. Tell the folks what that is, and then explain why we shouldn't be nervous about Facebook's ability to have deep understanding of human behavior, the aggregate, and have the ability to nudge it.
Good question. So we started this effort around deep learning within Facebook really as an extension to a lot of the work that we have to do today. As I mentioned before, we have just a tremendous amount of information that people offer, sort of bring into the platform, and we have to find ways to make that information relevant for people, right? In terms of finding the information, being able to consume stories and life events and things that are happening within the network of people and businesses that they connect to. So we have very sophisticated technology and teams of engineers that we've been building for years around machine learning for newsfeed ranking, for suggesting who might be in a photo that you took and helping you tag photos, to helping you find things using search, to ranking people for who you chat with. There's lots and lots of really hard problems in terms of the massive amount of data that we have to kind of process and give to you in this little screen in your pocket. And deep learning is kind of an extension of that. So we want to take a lot of the things that we've done in search, in newsfeed, in image, processing image recognition, photo face recognition, to the next level and provide more value to people. And we have our leader Yan, who's heading up that effort, and the team thinks a lot about the ethical issues that crop up here. And this is something that it's still early on, and like we're nowhere near Skynet today. That's like way the heck out there, and that's not like anything that is possible today. And we're really attached to and focused on the specific use cases within our product and making the product more useful for people consuming Facebook today.
There were some early, I would call it, experiments is too strong a word, but Facebook has looked at what it can divine about human behavior in the aggregate, and it's made some experiments in seeing if it can use that for socially beneficial ends. Mark encouraged people to sort up for donating organs if they wanted. There was some desire to prompt people to vote. You can understand why people might be nervous about Facebook's ability to influence elections, to influence social direction. In every nation that you operate, you say that you will be compliant with local law. If I'm the Egyptian government, for instance, I might be nervous about Facebook's aggregate understanding of a nation.
Yes.
He pauses at this point.
No, I'm sorry, I was trying to understand the question.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you tell nation states or governments or the citizenry at large that Facebook is will be consistently compliant with local law and is a benign social force?
So, a lot of our work that we do actually is working with all of the different, privacy and data protection agencies around the world, right? And that is a big part of what we do. And, whenever we're launching new features, changes in the product, we are working very closely with, agencies or sort of these decision makers, these policy makers in the world. It is actually a really important issue for us. This is not something that we will fling these things out there and figure it out later. So a lot of our work, and there's a whole set of people dedicated in the team, not within the world I live in, that spend time working on abiding by the laws within these different countries, but also working to understand how a new product may affect their perception. And a lot of this is education. There are ways for us to obviously abide by laws, but also if it's providing value to people using Facebook in a safe and secure way, then we believe that this is important in terms of what we're trying to do and connecting everything.
He was as candid as he could be there. I'm running a little bit late, I know, but let me take some questions from the audience, please, and then we'll move on to the next section. There are lots of hands raising up. There are people with mics. Let's move down here on the left, and then we'll do the right.
I'm David Levitt. I work in virtual reality, and everyone's wondering what you can say about your acquisition of Oculus VR. In particular, I've had demos of it, and I could look around, but I couldn't reach in. Do you have solutions for that you could talk about?
Yeah, so our acquisition of the Oculus acquisition that happened a couple of months ago, really, I think is at a high level, kind of focused on a couple things, which is one is, every, I guess, 10 to 15, 20 years, there's some big shift in terms of computing. The last one we know is mobile, and we really believe that one of the possibilities of shift is moving to something visual in the coming, say, decade or so. And so, one of the things that's interesting about Oculus and why I think it's a good fit for Facebook is that VR itself is something that's inherently social, and we believe that once it may start off as sort of a gaming experience, and there's a lot of excitement around what it may do for gaming in the industry today. But then beyond that, there's a lot of interesting ideas that I think we want to work on together in terms of social experiences. It may be going and visiting a place far away using using this technology. It may be visiting a doctor. It may be going and seeing a sporting event. It may be playing a different type of game, etc. So that's, I think, one of these places where the company is really investing in becoming just an incredibly awesome technology company. And we have these things like connectivity labs, the work in deep learning, the work in virtual reality, and many other places that we're investing in building up the team so that we can actually carry out this arc over the next couple of decades in terms of what we're building. Specifically, to answer your question around you can't interact with anything, these are big, hard problems that we're looking to build up the team and to hire folks within the team to start tackling these things and to start incorporating what you do with your hands, because you can't do anything with your hands, or it's hard to be using a controller when you can't see your hands and you have the goggles on. These are problems that we have to solve that are not yet solved, I think, in a good and seamless way for sort of the for the mass, for a large amount of people out there to consume today.
Take another question over here, please.
Hi, my name is Umar Khan. I work with Lunar, a premier design firm in the Valley. I spent 15 days in San Francisco and 15 days in India. And it's kind of interesting because India is now Facebook's largest market. I recently gifted my father-in-law an iPad, and he wanted Facebook on it. And it's interesting because I don't think that was the demography that Facebook was initially designed for. But they definitely seem to be a demography that is actually increasing in numbers. So what are the plans for making it more easier for them to use as well?
So I mean, we have a lot of, I think, I don't know if there's a sort of a specific answer to the question, which is that the Facebook application itself is designed for it's not sort of country or person specific. We have built this in a way that really is back to needing to building a tool that allows people to connect with everyone around them. And so there are particular things that we need to do to improve usability or accessibility for certain demographics. We have that stuff in the product, and we continue to refine that and to make that better. Those are things that are really important for us to keep doing. But there isn't a I guess with 1.3 billion people using Facebook, we kind of have a really you have lots of different types of people using Facebook today already, and we have to optimize to make it the best for as many people as possible.
Who has a short question that Jay can answer shortly? Raise your hand. Over here on the far left, a very short question. I've been so interested, I have taken 10 minutes for you.
Hi, my name is Abkhar. Quick question, how does the IoT or machines, how are machines going to enrich our lives with Facebook?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to some of the work that we talked about just a minute ago with the deep learning stuff. I think that it's cool to think about the internet being on your watch, or you being able to get phoned by your refrigerator that it's running hot today. I think there's just like a whole deluge of information coming in. And I think it's a really cool challenge for us to take these different sets of data that people may offer, and for us to make sense of it and to help people change their lives. Maybe there's things that we can do to help improve people's health care. Maybe there's hey, your blood pressure is low, or your blood sugar level is low, and let me call your family, your close family members, and let your doctor know that this is happening, or let me keep track of this so that you can look back throughout the course of the day and map what you ate with what you did and where you were in the world. And so I think these are all possibilities for us to help with, and I think that's kind of the opportunity going forward. But I think for us, we have to be investing in this deep technology, right? So there's things in machine learning and the deep learning part of it. There's the infrastructure that I talked about in terms of building out the data centers, the servers, the network. There's the mobile experience that you have to have. There's investing, in the virtual reality aspects of this. And this is the hard technology problems that we have to keep and persist on to be able to solve these problems.
Jay Parikh of Facebook. Jay, thank you very much.